right. Now the wheels are really turning after those sessions.
Honestly, that cooking analogy from Claire's session just made me really hungry for more competitive insights.
Don't forget, all of the content from today is being recorded and will be shared out after the event, so you won't even miss a thing, even Katie's terrible jokes.
That Adam wrote for me. Up next, we have our first panel session that I've been looking forward to. Lessons from the leaders, what they didn't tell you in CI school.
Hosted by Klue's VP of Success, Adam Houghton, and featuring Emily Childs-Lopez from Salesforce, Terry Hurst from Workday, and Jay Nakagawa from Dell Technologies. We'll be getting the inside scoop on what these competitive experts wish they could have taught themselves when they were getting started, what the industry needs to start doing, and more importantly, stop doing, and everything in between. Consider it a cheat sheet for anyone involved in competitive strategy.
Hey everyone. I'm Adam Houghton, VP of Customer Success at Klue. Super excited to be here today to talk to you about more competitive. So a bit about me. I've been at Klue for about 1.5 years now. I have 20 years experience in tech. So really dating myself here, but super fun to be part of the fast growth in this super exciting space. Coming to you live from Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, where Klue is headquartered. Super excited to be your host for this terrific panel. The angle we're going to take on this is a bit unique to some of the other conversations. So we're really going to get into the nitty gritty of what some of the seasoned experts wish they had known when they first started and what they've learned along the way. So lots of good stuff coming your way. You're going to want to get out your notebook. And so let's jump into the panel. And so first, I've got the pleasure of being joined by Emily Childs-Lopez. Emily is Director of Market Strategy at Salesforce. Welcome, Emily.
Good morning.
Emily's been at Salesforce for over 10 years now, spending the last 8 years on the competitive intelligence team, so has a terrific amount of knowledge. She currently owns CI operations, programs, global competitive enablement. So definitely a full plate there and a lot of expertise. Emily is a Northern California native, currently lives in sunny San Diego with her husband and 2 small children. So thanks again for joining us, Emily.
Happy to be here.
Great. Alongside Emily, we have Jay Nakagawa, Director of Competitive Intelligence at Dell Technologies. Welcome, Jay. Jay leads a team of competitive intelligence specialists at Dell, focused on leveraging technology to identify opportunities to win against the competition using product and company differentiation factors. The team over there uses a number of different technologies and techniques available, including predictive analytics, which is super cool. In addition to competitive intelligence expertise, Jay has over 20 years experience across sales, system engineering, business development, marketing, executive positions across all sorts of companies, including established ones like Dell, startups, and high growth companies. So super excited to have you join and sharing your insights, Jay.
Thanks, Adam.
Awesome. And then to round out this incredible panel, we have Terry Hurst. Welcome, Terry. Terry is Senior Director of Marketing Competitive Intelligence at Workday. And Terry is also a 20-year industry veteran. So you're seeing a bit of a pattern here. And Terry has worked in a variety of product marketing and competitive intelligence roles in the enterprise application space. Over the last 8 years, he's been focused on building a best-in-class competitive intelligence organization at Workday, which is definitely one of the best programs out there. And Terry brings a passion for beating the competition and proven strategies for building and leading high-performing CI teams. So we're going to learn a ton from this panel. Thank you all so much for taking the time to join us and sharing your experience. So before we get into the really good stuff, though, we wanted to start out with some intelligence of our own. So we're going to do just a quick game of let's play 2 truths and a lie as a bit of an icebreaker. And I feel like because I'm putting folks on the spot here, I should probably start. So I'll do that, and then maybe we'll go in the order the presenters came on board here. So Emily, Jay, and then Terry. So my 3 are: I have been a mascot, I have shaken the hand of a queen, and I can play the cello. And should someone guess which one of those is the lie?
I'm going to guess number 3.
Yeah, you are right. So I actually have been a mascot shaking the hand of a queen, which is super cool. I cannot play the cello, but one of my favorite instruments to listen to. So Emily, why don't you go next?
Sure. I love this. This is like real life competitive intelligence.
Exactly.
All right. I'll make mine quick, I hope. I lived abroad in Madrid for a semester abroad. I accidentally crashed my bike into Mark Benioff in San Francisco, and I am an Ironman.
Awesome. Jay, which one do you think is the lie?
Oh, that's a tough one, Emily. I'm gonna choose number 2.
You were correct. Good one.
Awesome. All right. Jay, you are up.
Okay, mines are all lies. No, that's not true. So first one is I played at the Los Angeles Jazz Festival. Number 2 is I narrowly escaped a bombing in London. And number 3 is I became an Eagle Scout at the age of 14.
Oh, awesome. And then Terry, which one are you going to call Jay out on?
I think it's the Eagle Scout.
You are correct.
All right. So far, the CI pros are doing their job really well. Terry, you're next.
All right. So my favorite movie is The Princess Bride. The band that I've seen the most in concert is Duran Duran. And I'm a season ticket holder to the San Jose Sharks.
Nice. Emily J, which one do you want to call Terry out there?
I'll do number 2.
Is it Duran Duran, Terry?
No, it's San Jose Sharks. I don't know anything about hockey.
Oh. All right. Cool. Well, thanks for sharing. That was always fun to learn a little bit more. And there might be a lot of folks in the audience who don't know Duran Duran. And if you don't know Duran Duran, do yourself a favor, go look them up on YouTube after this and listen to some of their tunes. So let's jump into it. So you've all held various roles throughout your careers and have definitely seen the landscape of CI change over the years. And so Emily, we'll start with you. What has fundamentally changed about your work in competitive from when you first started until today?
Sure. So I think looking back when I first joined the team, it was much more of a competitive marketing role, I would say, where we were kind of digesting the takeaways and differentiators. But it has evolved much more into more of a competitive analyst and like an intelligence role. So, looking at the broader forest through the trees and not just, kind of the one tree right in front of you has been the major shift, I would say, since I've joined the team.
Awesome. Super, super interesting. And then Jay, what about for you and your experience?
I think from my perspective and certainly where I'm at today with Dell, I think, there's a lot more technology available today than there was, almost 10 years ago. And so from that standpoint, the tools are better. The information gathering is better. Just a lot more. And conversely, at the same time, because there are so many tools today, I think it makes it a little bit more difficult to select the right tool for what you're trying to get done. So it's great that technology has evolved. And as you mentioned earlier, Adam, we're doing some stuff on the predictive side, which is very both interesting and illuminating. But, now it's not so much for us, it's not so much the tools. Now it's an integration of how you integrate these various tools, which are all standalone islands, into each other. So it's a closed loop system.
Yeah, super interesting. And then Terry, before we get to you, Emily, just on what Jay just mentioned there, with technology playing a big factor, how much of that would you say translates to what you have seen and what you talked about?
Yeah, I think technology certainly plays a role. It kind of is it's like a blessing and a curse because it just feeds you so much data, and a lot of the data is noise. So you have to be thinking, okay, like, how do I filter this out to make it hard hitting and really impactful? But the technology piece is certainly something that is going to continue to change and will always be helpful. It's just how you apply it is really something to consider as well.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely something we hear a lot is how do you filter out the noise and really try to understand what actually matters there. So great insights. And then Terry, how about for yourself and your experience?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I have a very similar thought to this as Emily and Jay. And when I started looking back at like how this has changed over the years, I just remember the competitive intelligence team. It used to be this team, and this is going back companies ago as well, that built the nice battle cards that sales used, right? And as I look at what this function does today, it's so much more than that, right? I mean, we're getting asked for stuff from, you know, the sales and product and strategy, you know, and marketing. And I think that's, to me, that's the big thing about how this role has just fundamentally changed. There's more stakeholders than ever before with more requests, and, you know, trying to serve all of them is the big challenge that I think that CI organizations have across the industry.
Yeah, interesting. And do you see, out of all those different stakeholder groups that you mentioned, one that has maybe changed the most in terms of expectations?
Well, I guess, you know, again, when I look back at things, it's, you know, old school competitive intelligence. It was help the sales team, right? But, you know, and
Yep.
so when I look at what's changed the most, it's the new stakeholders, right? Those organizations or departments that you weren't necessarily supporting in the past that you're supporting today. And so those are completely new types of requests that we're getting.
Right.
I think Terry brings up a good point. I think it's if you're doing your job well, competitive should be part of everybody's conversations. It should be
Exactly.
product, sales, investors. I mean, everybody across the board. So that should be everyone's goal. Every conversation should include competitive. Every sales meeting should include competitive. You need to have it top of mind for the broader organization.
Yeah. Awesome. Love it. And that's definitely, when we think about competitive enablement, it's definitely across the enterprise. So love that you're all seeing that as well. Let's jump into the next question here. And Jay, we'll start with you this time. So when you think back to the earlier days in your career, and if we could teleport back in time, what's the one thing you would teach your younger self about competitive intelligence?
You know, I think we, not by any intent, I think we got a lot of things correct. I know that I have a number of my peers, some who are no longer with the company, but we're certainly part of the formative years of the current iteration of CI. I guess the thing I would relate to the audience is be fearless, but don't be stupid about it. You know, be willing to go out there and experiment and try things, but don't try and boil the ocean. That's a really bad strategy. And I think we were very careful about selecting projects and, you know, setting expectations with our stakeholders. Frankly, we're very careful about using the setting lower expectations and then exceeding them when we deliver, setting timelines appropriately. And I think that served us well. And certainly if I had to go back and say, you know, what's the one thing I think we really did well, that was setting expectations and then over delivering.
Okay, great. And then how do you go about prioritizing those expectations, especially when you now have multiple or more stakeholder groups maybe to serve than before?
Well, you know, there are certain stakeholders like Michael Dell, happens to be the shirt name too,
Yeah.
but name of the company. Yeah, but you know, certainly when Michael and the executive leadership team want something, they get priority for obvious reasons. But as far as the other stakeholders, we try and achieve a little bit of a balance in the sense that we look at something and we'll say, okay, does this project we're being requested to do affect multiple stakeholder groups? And therefore, it's not just a one-off type of thing.
Right.
And we try and be careful about that because it's a lot of energy, a lot of time spent. So we try and be very careful about making sure that we're able to spread the wealth, so to speak, to multiple stakeholder groups.
Awesome. Love that. Makes a ton of sense and seems so simple, right? When you illustrate it that way. Terry, same question for you. What would you teach your younger self about competitive intelligence?
I guess if I'm looking back on, you know, my time with this particular team and having built this function here at Workday, you know, if I could go back, you know, one of the most important decisions that I think I made, you know, I wish I would have made it sooner, is making sure that we're delivering a steady flow of information, and we're the ones who are delivering that information. And so there's a number of different vehicles for us to push information out, whether it's, you know, other teams' newsletters and working through that. But I think that where we've had the most success is making sure that we have an outlet for the great work that we do, and we have the ability to kind of shape the message and shape the narrative and shape the insights that we're delivering. And so when I look at kind of what we've been doing with that, I would go back and tell my younger self, make sure that you're doing that early on.
Interesting. And why, curious, why do you think it's so important that those messages are coming from you and your team as opposed to maybe other folks contributing?
Well, I think there's a couple of reasons. I think that one is we don't want it to get lost, right?
Right.
Again, I believe that the work that we're doing is incredibly important, right? I mean, I look at the insights that's being delivered. It's very important. I want to make sure that there's a light being shown on it, and everybody within the organization who needs to see it is seeing it.
Yeah.
Right? The other part of that too, it's helping shape the identity of the team, right? And I want to make sure that this particular function, which again, I've said it, is an incredibly important function, is seen as such. And I think that we've done a great job of shaping that here within the company.
Awesome. Great. And then Emily, what about for you and your younger self? If you could teleport, what would you tell yourself?
Yeah, I like what Terry's saying, because I would add on to that and say, like, we should be the single source of truth when it comes to competitive intelligence, but you have to rely on your team. I mean, there are eyes and ears across the entire company. And so you should leverage them to feed you information, but also kind of use cohorts is what we call them. And so you're almost training the trainer so they can, you giving them intel and they can spread it around just to help you scale. And then another thing I think that is really important that probably will come up many times today, but making sure that all of the intel is ethically sourced. And so you're minding your P's and Q's, and don't take intel, as tempting as it is, that is not, kosher. Like, you want to make sure it's all publicly facing and you're using only the intelligence that is available to everyone.
Yeah, I love that call out. It's super important. I think it adds to the credibility as well of the content, and hopefully eliminates some of the reactive things that happens. People tend to get pretty reactive and
That's right.
Worked up about rumors that come in, right? So yeah, having a single source of truth for all that is great. And then next question, and Terry, you commented on this already with putting a spotlight on the team, building a bit of a culture. So we'll start with you on this next one. So all of you oversee teams of people. And then in your opinion, what does a culture that breeds success look like to you for CI? And maybe just expanding on what you've already commented on a bit.
Yeah. I think there's a couple of parts to this. And I think the first one is, it's important for the team to see the impact that they're making, right? And connecting the dots between the research and analysis that they're providing and the impact that it has on the company. And whether it is, whether it's within, win rates within sales, or the direction of a product, or something like that, being able to help the team see, where they're having an impact breeds success on the team. It just encourages people. And then the other part of this too is, attracting great people into these roles, right? And I think, again, I look back on my time here, and if I have done one thing, and I think it is attracting amazing people into this organization, right? And as you start looking at people that have come in, it's people that have come in from all different backgrounds, right? Not necessarily competitive intelligence analysts, but from other roles. And they come in, and, you recognize within them, they have like this, competitive streak and this appetite for information. And they're just hungry to go out and just find stuff. And, again, I like to say that I like to hire people that are smarter than me and just as competitive, which is great for CI. It gets a little interesting on team outings like bowling, but I'll take it. And so I think that kind of thing, those two things there, to me, breed success on within an organization like ours.
Awesome. All right. So you gotta tell us now. Are you the best bowler on the team, or is someone?
I thought I was. Literally, I thought I was, but I came in second. And so if my team is listening to this, they know that I'm still holding on to that. And that was like 3 years ago. So
yeah. All right. Well, once we can all get back and meeting in person, well, maybe we should have a big bowling tournament at the next summit.
Like it.
Perfect. And then Emily, what about for you? What is that culture that breeds success look like for you and at Salesforce?
Yeah, I really like what Terry had to say. I would add on to what we think about is not being afraid to go against the grain. Our job is to be the unbiased truth tellers, and that is sometimes hard to do. And so, you want don't shoot the messenger mentality. Like, don't be afraid to. I have 2 small kids. The cheese stands alone. Don't be afraid to be the cheese. Like, you need to be not just the cheerleader and the voice. Like, yeah, we're great. Like, you have to be the one thinking and saying, what if? And it's our job to be paranoid. And so kind of keeping that mentality, and that's a safe place to be that unbiased truth teller.
Yeah, super interesting. And then for the team members that you have brought on, whether it's internally or externally, is there a common pattern of experiences or roles they've had before they get into a CI function?
I think to Terry's point too, all backgrounds are welcomed. I think the main kind of theme across all of us is that, yes, we are all very competitive and very type A. And, we've done these personality assessments where everybody tends to kind of boil into one type of bucket, but don't underestimate the folks that stand out of those buckets too, because they are going to be the folks that really round out the way you're thinking and take you out of your perspective and out of the box that you might be in. So I think, I can't just limit it like you must meet these 3 requirements or something, because it's really across the board.
Yeah, definitely. And definitely hearing a theme across both you and Terry, just on the competitive nature, like that has to be there. You've got to want to win, right? Awesome. And then Jay, how about for yourself? What does a culture that breeds success look like for you and Dell?
Well, I echo the same thing that both Emily and Terry mentioned. Hiring the right people is really important. I have some folks who have been with me for the entire time I've been in the CI realm, and they were some folks that I hired. I also have some legacy people from before, but I think the retention rate's really good. Part of this for us is being able to measure our success, and so when we deliver things to key stakeholders, let me give you an example. Across the board, and we cover all the product lines within Dell. We know exactly what our success rate, what our win rate is against the competition. We can articulate that to executives, to other stakeholders, and so we know what our win rates are like. I think that the acceptance of the number of users that we have using the platform today, which obviously is Klue, now exceeds 30,000, is a testament to doing the right things. And so those are all important things. And so we're kind of fanatical about measuring things, because part of this is if you can't measure it, how do you define success? If you can't measure it, that's pretty hard. Getting to the other side, the personnel side, we tend to look for folks who are really good, or as you might hear me phrase before, as a high tolerance for ambiguity, because they have to be able to take these highly ambiguous situations, make sense of it, and deliver it as something that's actionable insights to our stakeholders. And so, otherwise you just become more noise in the air if you're just parroting stuff that's already out there in the news feeds or other G2 out there. So it's really important to say, okay, we're hearing this, but what does this mean? And give your stakeholders something that can be actionable from that. So for us, that's kind of the cornerstones of it.
Yeah, awesome. And definitely a focus on the data and the sheer volume of folks you have consuming competitive intel is great to see. Terry, Emily, curious on Jay mentioned, things like win rates and trying to tie back to that type of data. How important is that in each of your programs?
I'll chime in. We definitely keep an eye on win rates and close rates, and just the data in general. I mean, we are a CRM company. We look at the data quite a lot.
Yeah.
But we don't only use that, and I'll say why, because we can only influence so much of the sales cycle. So we've looked at it in the past and used those as measurements in the past, but realized quickly, like, well, there could be a million other reasons that they don't go with Salesforce for whatever reason that we can't influence. And do we really want to hang our hat on that measurement and have that be the defining factor? It can work for some organizations. It just didn't work for ours. But yeah, we definitely let the data be our guide in a lot of regards, but also use more of the anecdotal data as well.
Got it. Awesome. And then Terry, what about for Workday?
Yeah, and I think that last point that Emily just made, as far as taking, the data, like, what Jay was talking about, taking that out, measuring win rates and so forth, all of the anecdotal data as well that goes along with it. That's our job, right? We're pulling all of that information together to gather a complete picture, right? And so that kind of information is key. And again, the comment was made, like, how much influence are we having on actual deals closing? But that's the ultimate measurement, right? And so that's something that we have to take a look at. And another thing that I think Emily said it here, we have to be honest with the company, right? And so we have to be the ones that's delivering that information and say, directionally, how are we going? And that's what the data tells us.
Yeah, awesome. Definitely a data theme, and I think the bigger the company, the more data, the more resources to try to understand the stories that it's telling. So awesome insights. So as we look into the future, curious for each of you, what's the biggest challenge you think the industry is facing today, and what are some of the emerging trends you're seeing? And Emily, let's start with you.
Well, I think I touched on it, or maybe we all kind of added our 2 cents. It's just the amount of data coming at us. It's just overwhelming. And I think it's great, but it's a double-edged sword because you're also trying to weed through it. So I think applying some methodologies to how you're looking at that data that we've been discussing, like one of the things that we always bring up is the, godfather of competitive, Michael Porter's, and the Porter 5 Forces and the 4 corners, and like thinking about it as a broader strategic landscape is really key. And then, I think that's one of the bigger challenges. I don't know if it's the biggest one.
Okay. And then Jay, anything to add to that?
I guess I'm thinking a little bit differently in the sense that I think some of the challenges can be really overcome by participating in various groups and getting training. For example, Bengalot has a great series of trainings through ACI. A lot of our team members participate in an organization called SKIP, which is a Strategic and Competitive Intelligence Professionals Group. And so there's a lot of peer-to-peer sharing of information and ideas. I think that's a critical component, at least in my opinion, where you're actually able to bounce ideas off of your peers. And, even though, for example, there are some competitive companies to us out there, at the competitive practitioner level, we're able to exchange ideas and say, hey, what worked for you in this? What didn't work for you? And to me, that's a really critical component going forward.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, I think the community aspect there is an important one. And then Skip is a great organization for those maybe who haven't heard of it, for sure. And then Terry, what about you for challenges and emerging trends that maybe haven't been touched on yet?
Well, I think one of the biggest challenges that I see, and this is something that Jay's hit upon and Emily hit upon it as well, is I think that as we kind of have success and with these functions, the expectations go up, and the expectations go up because there's so much information that's readily available to people, right? And so it's, what more can you deliver? Can you deliver it faster? And I think that's the biggest challenge that we have. It's taking all that information in, processing it, analyzing it, and turning it around with something that is insightful and actionable on short notice. And I think that's the biggest thing.
Yeah. I've heard it described before. And Terry, this may have been you, but there's so many people in the organization have access to data, especially external data. And a lot of folks are really quick to want to share that, whether it's on Slack or Microsoft Teams. And I think it went like everyone shares the information, but you and your roles, you're still expected to share it first and accurately. And that's a big challenge as there's more data out there for everybody.
That's exactly it. I mean, it's like, anybody can share anything and anybody can put their opinion on anything. But when it comes from our organization, there's an expectation that, that it be accurate, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it does create, it does create a challenge.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think also, just one thing to add to that, it's like, you don't necessarily just need to be the first one to share it, but the one that takes the time to think about the so what and the why does this matter? Yeah. Because without that, like, anybody can just share any news article at any time, and we do, but it's our job to digest it and spit it out in a meaningful way. Yeah,
awesome. And I think that goes back, Emily, you touched on that notion of a single source of truth. Where can I go to find trusted information? That can be a big challenge for sure. So maybe we'll jump into one more question we have here for the panel. And so what is one piece of advice you'd give to somebody who's figuring out just how to build and how to start building a competitive program? Jay, let's start with you this time.
Okay, sounds good, Adam. As I mentioned before, the organizations are good because there are, I think the thing that I hear most often about is, hey, I'm a one-person shop, or I've only got 2 to 4 people, which seems to be about the average size is 2 to 4 people. Yeah. Again, don't try and do everything, but talk with your peers, especially there are people from different vertical industries, pharma, insurance, banking, et cetera. Talk with your peers because they've been through it, and while your stakeholders and actually deliverables may be different, there's some lessons learned in there that can save you a lot of heartache.
Yeah, great advice for sure. And then Terry, what about you?
Yeah, I got a very similar thought to Jay, and Jay, kind of mentioned something at the outset too, which is, like the comment about not trying to boil the ocean. When I started the team, we had a very narrow focus, right? We had this function, these were our stakeholders, and this is what we were trying to do. And a little story, I remember, after being in the role for a few years and feeling like we're doing this great job, someone within the company, and one of the executives, like, I didn't even know we had a competitive function. And I'm like, my gosh, I failed, right? What happened? Then I realized, wait a second, that wasn't my charter. I wasn't trying to support that team. But what we did is we supported this particular function that we wanted to, that was our original charter. We got, good at doing that. And then we expanded, and then we expanded and we expanded. And had I tried to expand it too soon and support all of these different functions, I don't think that we would have done as great a job because we didn't have the right skills on the team. We didn't have the right knowledge. So, start with, something, do it really well. And then as you kind of expand out, take on more.
Yeah. That's great advice. And then Emily, what about for you?
Yeah, I think those are really good pieces of advice. And I think to add on, just set that expectation early about what you will be thinking about and focusing on. And then, like Terry said, expand from there, and use your broader organization. Create cohort, use the broader team that are the eyes and ears, so that you're not doing it alone, because it's always a team effort, and you have you truly can't do it alone. It's really required to be part of the entire organization.
Yeah, that's a great point that Emily just made. And I don't know, when we do any sort of training, whether it's with a sales team or a pre-sales team, I always tell people, email works 2 directions, right? And so we might be pushing stuff out to you, but hey, look at, it's if you have a response to something we did, email me back, right? I want to hear from you guys.
Yeah, the ecosystem is really important because you have the closed loop mechanism, not only disseminating information but getting it back. And a lot of times, for example, in our case, the field will often get some great G2 that can make a difference right away. We have to go through a process of verifying it, make sure it's accurate. But once we have that, again, the Salesforce does a great job of providing that two-way mechanism.
That's great. And then how do you, I imagine, especially in bigger companies like all of yours, the amount of volume can be extremely high. So, let's say you've got people contributing, sharing information, asking questions, which is great, but how do you manage that at scale?
Managing the number of requests can be a challenge at times. For example, for any one of our subject matter experts, they may be, as I mentioned, we have 30,000 users, which includes not only our direct sales force, but also partners. It could be a little bit of a challenge. And again, this is part of, we're both Salesforce and Workday users. So we use a lot of tools to try and combine data and try and focus. And, we know, for example, who are the better sellers, who are the ones who need more attention, who are struggling. And we try and use a variety of all those factors to try and, try and affect the business at a more holistic level.
Yeah, some tactical ways we do too we have it's a custom object. We have Salesforce, obviously, and we use a custom object that we built out called a deal support request, where you can get one-on-one coaching from our team in a sales compete. And then Slack is a great resource as well, because yes, we are monitoring the groups and the channels, but it's also crowdsourced. So leveraging the broader organization again is really great. And then kind of designating the cohort people to help answer those questions, so it is the accurate answer and not just somebody's opinion, is another really good way to tackle that.
Yeah, that's great. And then within Slack, and I imagine that'll become more prevalent for Salesforce too. Is there governance on like the channels? Are those, like, if it's a CI channel as an example, is that managed by your team, or do different teams have their own channels and you're participating in them?
We have our designated Slack channels that we monitor. There are rogue channels that of course pop up as well, but we set the expectation that you can do those for sure, but we will only be monitoring these set ones.
Awesome. That's great. And then Terry, anything to add on the feedback loop piece?
Well, I would just say we have a very similar kind of process here as what Emily and Jay were saying. So we're heavy Slack users as well, and just monitoring those. So we have some channels that we use internally and we monitor, but you do get a lot of folks that are joining into the discussion, which I like. Right? It's not just all on us, but we're monitoring it. Yeah,
well, that's great. And I imagine even for just creating the awareness across the organization, that's how a lot of people might hear about all the great things that the CI team is doing. And Terry, to one of the points you made, putting a spotlight on that work, is maybe that's one of the spots that can happen as well. So we do have some questions from the audience, and there's an interesting one here that I'll put out there for the panel to touch on. And it's related to the use of lifecycle marketing in regards to reaching users or buyers at different stages. So we've talked about seller enablement, and I think this question is more related to buyer enablement. And how do you provide the right competitive assets at the right stage of a deal? What are some of the things that you would recommend and that you're seeing effective across your organizations?
Okay, I'll jump on this. We actually have orchestrated Salesforce quite a bit. So we know at the different stages what's going on. We've actually orchestrated competitive information and feedback loops within SFDC itself, but also at the same time, when a opportunity goes to a certain stage, we will automatically deploy some of our assets to those salespeople, whether it be internal or a partner channel, channel partner type person.
Yep.
And so we automatically deploy that information that kind of as a proactive way for us to approach getting the right information into the hands of the seller at the right time. Now, over time, the competitors they're up against may change, but at least we're able to start giving them some guidance early on.
Awesome. Yeah, no, that's terrific. And then Emily and Terry, anything you would comment on there that you're doing maybe a little bit differently or just to validate?
I would just add one element to what Jay just said. In addition to sort of deploying assets, one of the things that's very helpful for sellers is live content, right? And being able to hear firsthand, hear from peers, ask questions, And so kind of, looking at specific opportunities maybe that have a common competitor or they're at a common stage, and then holding, live events where, people can ask questions, like I said, and, we can share content. Those seem to go over really well, right? I mean, people will consume content, but they like to hear it live.
Yeah, and then I think I would add to that we often leverage our customers and collect customer stories. So let the customers do the selling for us, because we can tell them till we're blue in the face why we think we're different. But hearing from the other folks that are in the same spot as them or as prospects like we're, we want to make sure that those messages get out. And so use your customers and don't be afraid to ask, especially, it builds trust on both ends. So let the customers do the selling for you as well.
Yeah, that's definitely what we see across a lot of our customers too. And sales reps really love that social proof that they can use. So layering in that type of information is super important. All right, so we're almost at time here. So maybe if there's one more quick rapid fire question for the panel here, it's if there's one thing you want the audience to take away from what we've talked about today for each of you, what would that be?
One thing I forgot to mention, or I don't remember if it came up. I'm pretty sure it didn't. I think Terry brought this up before, but be a continuous drumbeat and make sure your voice is out there so they know who you are, where to get your information, and that you are that single source of truth, so that you are, building rapport however you do it. Either it's probably not in person, but even through the Slack channels or whatever, however you're pushing information, but be a continuous drumbeat so that they know it's there and can rely on you to give it to them.
Yeah, love it. That's awesome. Jay, Terry?
Yeah, I think piggybacking on what Emily just said, you really need to be out there and always promoting yourself and what you're doing, because just as busy as people are today in general, it's often easy for somebody to forget that you're a resource until they actually really need it, and you don't want to be taking those 12th hour type of Hail Mary type of situations. So always promoting yourself to your leaders, whether it be product management, marketing, executives, sales, whatever it happens to be, is really important, because you always want to make sure that you've got quote a seat at the table, and that they come to rely upon you for information. Yeah,
love it. And then Terry?
Yeah, and I guess my parting comment would be very similar to what Jay and Emily just said, and it would be, I think that we have some of the coolest jobs in the industry, right? I think that this particular function, I look at what we do, the exposure that we get. It's a great time to be in competitive intelligence. And I think, not just, it's like one thing, be an evangelist, but, being a champion for what it is that we do. And I think that enthusiasm for it, if I was to kind of look back, I feel like that enthusiasm has helped attract like some of the folks on the team, right? And it's like, hey, that's a great function. It's a great team. It's it has amazing impact. And when we kind of promote that, it does great things for the function. It does great things for the team.
Yeah, no, I love it, and I think so much of that points to why it's so great to have each of you on this panel. A lot of that expertise and thought leadership is out there. Executing against it is always the trick. That doesn't happen without terrific leadership. So thank you to all of you for sharing all of your insights. So that'll be a wrap for this session, but awesome discussion. And then we have a short break coming up in the programming. So we do have networking sessions throughout the meet and greet tab on the left-hand side of your screen. So we definitely encourage you to jump in there. You can connect with attendees one-to-one, have some more discussions on this. And there'll be some folks from the Klue team on as well who have some swag they're trying to pass out. So hopefully you can get some of that. But again, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Feel free to connect further with any of us on LinkedIn, and enjoy the rest of the summit.
Wow. I don't know about you, Adam, but my notebook is literally full after that session.
All of my notes are up here.
Who writes this? Well, that explains a lot. It's time for another break, but before we head into this afternoon's programming, feel free to jump over to the meet and greet zone to connect with folks. And if you're lucky and meet some Klue people, you're going to get some prizes.
Make sure to join us at 11:45 a.m. Pacific time as Chris Ignoli, competitive enablement lead at Juniper Network, shares his practical approach to implementing competitive enablement at the enterprise level. And Tamara Shebel, Klue's VP of Product, will be sharing Klue's vision for competitive enablement.